Alrighty, y'all, welcome back to the channel. We are putting gas in the VMAX. So it is Saturday. We're going to ride my VMAX back to the house from work. Well, it's Saturday motovlog day anyway, guys. Took 3.2 gallons. This bike only has a 4-gallon tank. And for those that don't know anything about this bike, to me and a lot of other people, this is the baddest cruiser bike that was ever produced. So there are two generations of Yamaha VMAX. You have the Gen 1, which was one of the hardest accelerating bikes you could buy in 1984. I think they made 150-ish horsepower. And then I want to say around 2009, you ended up with this bad boy, the Gen 2 VMAX, and it puts out 200 horsepower. This bike is my Porsche, it's my Lamborghini. This is my fast, fun bike to ride. Yeah, and the specs reflect that. Again, we're talking about a bike that has a 1700cc V4, putting out 200 horsepower, 120 foot-pounds of torque. It will clear 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, according to Google. And the quarter mile is 10 threes, 10 ones at like 137 miles an hour. And the top speed is 160. Yeah, I love this thing. It's actually my oldest motorcycle as far as actually year-wise and how long I've owned it. The story behind my VMAX is simple. I had an FXDRS Harley, and I rode it down to Florida. I visited my family. My little brother had, I think it was a liter bike at the time, Gixxer. He does the sport bike thing. I did the cruiser bike things. We went on a ride together, grabbed some breakfast. He swapped bikes with me. I got off of what I thought was a fast Harley, got on a liter bike, and decided I needed something faster. It was that simple. So, I made it back home from Florida to Arkansas. Knew what a VMAX was, decided that was the right bike for me because I didn't want a sport bike, I wanted a cruiser bike. Basically, I typed in on Google at the time, what is the world's fastest cruiser bike? And this is what popped up. So, I looked up Yamaha. They actually had a used one on my local dealership, and I went and picked this bike up. When I got this bike, it was a different color. I painted it due to an incident where another motorcycle fell on it and scratched the scoops, which were all hand polished. I don't know who is behind me, but they're annoying me. Yep, thank you. Because those look like Dodge headlights. They were not. It was a Buick or an Acura or something. It was not a cop car. That's all I care about. So, yep, it fell on it, scratched the hand polished scoop. So my options for repairing it was to take the scoop off, hand polish it, and hope I could match it to the other side, or paint it. I tried tapping the dent out of my airbox cover because this is not a tank. The tank is under the seat on these bikes. So I tapped that out, it cracked the paint. we ended up with a whole paint job that I did in my shed. It's been good for a few years. We're about to repaint it. We're about to replace some fork sills. Get this bike freshened up next year for next year's riding season. Basically, when I pull the front forks off, I'm going to pull the rest of the body panels off. Everything that's black on the bike is going to get resprayed black. Anything that's orange is going to get resprayed a different color. And y'all will have to wait to see that. But yeah, that is how I ended up with my VMAX. And again, I did the first oil change on this bike. I've put almost 16,000, 1,500. I put 14,888 miles on the bike. So the VMAX is shaft drive. So for those that don't know, with motorcycles, we have 3 drive types. You have a chain drive, which is your typical chain and sprocket. You then have a belt drive, which is your belt and sprocket. They look more like a cog to me, but whatever. And then you have the shaft drive, and all of them do their best for things. So, the VMAX being a shaft drive, the shaft is stupid reliable. I have to change final drive oil every 20,000 miles on this bike. A little more if I'm riding it harder. So that's basically rear gear oil. Every 20,000 miles, I have to change it. It's that simple. I have a video up about doing that recently. The oil came out completely clear. The bike's good to go. I also just redid the oil change on this because I have a Florida trip coming up and the Harley is loaned out. So my other video I was talking about taking the Harley on said trip. I think I'm taking the VMAX. We'll see. I could very easily get my Harley back. I can put the guy that's borrowing my Harley on this. I trust him enough to keep himself alive. He also said he was fine riding my KLR, so we'll see. I've never taken the VMAX home to Florida, so it'd be kind of cool to take it home and show the family. But, you know, honestly, the Harley will do better on the interstate. The Harley has a big fairing to block the wind. I always love it when they do that. I guess he got mad that I got over. Whatever. Yeah. So, the Harley will block the wind. It actually has cruise control and it has a 6th gear. Right now, we're doing 79, 80. I'm doing just a tick under 4,500 RPMs. And this bike has a small gas tank. The bike has a 4-gallon gas tank. I need gas every 100 miles. So on a 598 mile trip, that's stopping that's 6 stops. The Harley can go about 200, I think, on the tank, maybe a little less. There's only a couple of spots where the gas concerns me. And really then it shouldn't be that big of a deal. The Harley also has cruise control and bags. That's really the limiting factor. I got a tank bag coming that's magnetic. I'm going to put on here tonight. It's actually at the house. We're going to see if that'll work to let me make my trip, to hold my cell phone, because as y'all can tell in most of my videos, I don't like stuff on my bars. I don't like cell phone mounts on the bars. It's just kind of a weirdo on that one. It's just how I am. So, anyway, that's enough about that. We're going to see if we can get the bag set up and I can make the trip on this. If I can, I will. Oh, the Harley also has cruise control. I do have a throttle stop that will allow me to take my hand off the bars, give me a little bit of a rest. I can just rest it there. But an actual cruise control would be nice. So what surprises me more than anything about this bike is how comfortable it is. Why this would be the first trip home, I have actually ridden this bike back from the Tail of the Dragon, which is, ironically enough, 600 miles from my house. I run the same route, I run the same mileage going home to visit my folks in Florida as it would for me to go to the Dragon's Tail. So, and that trip is coming. It'll probably get pushed off till next spring. Just a lot going on, guys. So, we talked about the shaft drive. Let's talk about some quirks with the shaft drive. Now, one of the quirks with the shaft drive is the bike will jack or shaft jack, meaning when I give it gas, the back of the bike picks up. The directional forces push the back tire into the ground. That is really good for accelerating. That is not so good for cornering, because when you let off the gas, it reverses those forces and it kind of picks the front end up slightly. Now, with that being said, it's not so abrupt if you know it's coming. There's something else about this bike that is a little more crazy with cornering, which we'll get into here in a second. But all shaft drive bikes do that, and your shaft drive bikes are going to be your metric bikes. They're going to be your your metric cruisers. So what is a metric cruiser? A metric cruiser is like a Honda, a Yamaha, something that takes mostly metric bolts on the bike. Is why we call them a metric cruiser. Your Harley, for the longest time, took standard bolts. By that definition, technically a V-Rod, which I love, would be a metric cruiser. Don't do it. So those shaft drives. So why would you use a shaft drive? Like I said, stupid reliable. On a bike with 200 horsepower, you need a really big chain, really strong sprocket. This bike came out in 2010, I think, ran to 2020. This one is a 2014, I believe. Memory serves. Again, I've had it for a few years now. I've had it long enough to pay the bike loan off. So, chains have, so they went with the shaft drive on the bike. There are people that do chain conversions on these. I will not be doing chain conversions on these. One of the pluses to a chain, besides the weird jack shafting and stuff like that you have to deal with, which I kind of started my street bikes on a Shadow that had that shaft, so I'm used to it. It's just what I learned on. But yeah, so chains aren't going to do that. Chains don't stretch like a belt, but chains take a lot more maintenance. On my KLR, which is a chain drive bike, I'm lubing that chain once a week. Or every time I take it on an off-road adventure, we get a bunch of dust in it, etc., it gets lubed. Yes, I only need to lube it once every 1,000 miles, but I think that's what it is on a chain. I'd have to look it up again. I do it once a week just because it's easy for me to remember. It's become a weekly thing. If I get it in the dust, I get it in the mud, I have to clean it real good and then re-lube it. Also, when you go to replace the chain, you're going to have to replace chain and sprocket. Odds are the engine will crap out before I have to worry about replacing the final drive on this bike. What about belts? Well, Harley and some other cruiser bikes run belts. They are like they remind me of as a Cogden supercharger belt, but they're like a carven Kevlar, like a Kevlar belt. They're a really strong belt. There is some stretch to them, not a lot, and you don't have to do any maintenance. However, the belt will wear out, but because it's rubber, it doesn't wear out the sprockets as bad, so the belt breaks, you have to put a new belt on. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's not horrible. My preferred drive type is belt driven. I get rid of the jacking, the shaft jacking on the bike. It gets rid of all the maintenance basically. Obviously I would not put that on this bike. And if I'm using something off-road where gravel and rocks can get in between the belt and cause it to stretch and snap, it's not a good option there. So, because, you know, the belt's thick. It's about 1 inch thick, I think, on my Harley. So rocks can get it flung up in there and break it. I feel like that is what broke the belt on my Road Glide. I think I picked up a rock and the belt snapped, but it is what it is. So, what was the other thing that makes this bike a handful in the corners? Well, this bike, the original VMAX, was carbureted. And to give it nice manners at low speed like this bike has here, it had 2 sets of primary. It had a primary and a secondary set for, you know, bringing air and fuel into the carburetor. Well, when you're wide open throttle in the right RPM range, it would open those secondaries and you would get a boost of power. You get this on muscle cars too when you're running a, you know, like a Holley 4-barrel car. So, or an Edelbrock 4-barrel, something of that nature. Well, to simulate that with this bike and to give it a nice, you know, around town manners, this has a simulated V-boost. It's in the computer system. I don't know if it's actually like VTEC where you have different lobes on a cam. It could be. But under my big air tank here, at 5,000 RPMs, the velocity stacks lift up and the bike gets a big boost of power. I felt it when I got on the interstate back there, leaving work. We hit 5,000 RPMs, the bike boosted forward because it opened it up, got a straighter shot. The scoops are functional on this bike. Now, what that can do is if you're at 5,000 or 4,500 RPM, something like that, and you're leaned over in a corner and you start to work the corner up and you get above that 5,000 RPMs, that power can still kick in and it can dump a bunch of torque to the bike. And it's a weird feeling when that happens. So, now, the other thing about my bike is not a stock VMAX. My bike has an intake mod, an exhaust mod, and a tune. When I did that, I had to upgrade the clutch system because it was pushing through the clutch. So I had to add what's known as the double D clutch plate, which is basically it added a secondary plate on the clutch because unlike your Harley or some other clutches where you have springs, this has a plate that has fingers, kind of like a clutch in a car. So I have 2 of those in there now to double my clamping force to allow it to not push through the clutch. That makes this clutch really heavy. It's why you don't really see me riding this a lot in any type of stop and go traffic. I'm not going to want to take this to a parade because of that, because you'll notice I don't two-hand this. I'm using my full hand to pull this clutch in. It's a heavy clutch for a bike. So, what horsepower numbers does my bike put out? I have no clue. It was a mail order tune. The story behind that is someone got on the VMAX page that was tuning bikes. This was a computer that he had where he sent it out to somebody else. He would get their computer in. He would get their mods off their bike, write a tune for it, send it out to them. They would test it, say, hey, I like this, there's a dead spot here, maybe data log if they had the stuff to data log. And then they would send their computer back and they would send that computer back. He would go, cool, I've messed this up. He would then write them a new tune, send it out to them, and they would send his computer back. And if they liked it, golden. If not, they would keep going back and forth until he got it where he wanted it. Or they could bring the bike in and have it tuned. Someone chipped the computer where the plug goes into it. So where the plug went into it, there was a small chip out of it. He didn't want to send that computer in. So he said, hey, if someone will trade me their stock computer and tell me the mods on their bike, I'll write them a tune and we'll get your bike tuned. And I'll trade you the computer. And I think it ended up being like what it would cost just for him to flash it for the file. So I basically got my bike tuned for like $150. And he nailed it right out of the box. Now, my bike has very simple mods that a lot of VMAXs had, so he's done a bunch of them, so it's really easy for him to nail it. Yes, if I put the bike on a dyno, we could probably find some more power, but guys, the bike's plenty fast for me. You know, again, 200 horsepower on a bike. Once again, guys, 0 to 60 in 2.5 and a quarter mile for the stock version. You know, 10 ones at 137. That is not a slow vehicle in anyone's book. Basically, if I decide to merge, I'm merging. If I don't see a demon badge, I'm not worried about it. As far as Mopars go, you know, obviously a modified car, yes. I've seen a Cobra that can outrun me. I know this because he outran my friend's R1. My friend's R1 outran my bike. However, from 40 to 120, my VMAX was in front. The torque just made up the difference. Maybe that'll put that into perspective, guys. In 2014, when this bike was made, I think your big super bike, your R1 or your CBR 1000 or your Gixxer 1000, the Ninja 1000, which is maybe the same bike. Please forgive me. I'm not a sport bike guy, guys. You know, their horsepower was probably 160, 170 horsepower, and their torque was 120 foot, or 90, 80 something foot-pounds of torque. You know, this bike is a monster, guys. And I call it my monster. And again, the thing that impresses me more than anything about this bike is how comfortable it is. It's got a big, wide seat. So the bike's really comfortable, even on longer trips. I can hop on this bike and ride it anywhere. You know, and like I said, we're probably going to prove that. I'm probably taking this again to Florida here next weekend. But yeah, guys, that's about enough for the VMAX. So, matter of fact, I'm probably going to call this video here. I think I've covered the VMAX. I did this because some people were more interested in this bike. You don't see a lot of them. I don't know how many were made. We haven't been able to figure that out in the VMAX community. I will say this, in all of Arkansas, and I drive 370 miles a day for work, I know of 4 VMAXs, including mine. I know one that likes to go to the track, one where the dude likes to be at Cycle Gear, and I have not, and to be honest, those two might be the same VMAX. I know of one other person that has one that's been on a ride with me, and I've seen one VMAX in Magnolia, way down south. I'm sure there are a few more, but you know, you buy a car or you buy a bike or vehicle and you start seeing them everywhere. That did not happen with this bike. So if you ever get a chance to ride one and you are an experienced rider, it's worth it. They are an absolute riot. It's a big, heavy bike that just is stupid powerful and stupid fast. This is as close to a muscle car as you're going to get on a motorcycle. I call it my hyper cruiser because I think the numbers are in hypercar territory. But that's just me. It is technically a muscle bike. And until I find something faster, it'll remain the baddest cruiser bike on the planet. Guys, I want to thank y'all again for enjoying and coming and listening to my videos. It means a lot. I hope y'all are having a wonderful day or night. I love y'all. I really mean that. And remember, life's an adventure. Get out there and live it.